Welcome again to another episode of You and the Law. Remember, this is brought to you courtesy of Mondale Justice. If you recall, in the last episode, we discussed the fundamental right to liberty as contained in Section 35 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999. We discussed at length the details and the parameters, the whole aspects of the right to liberty. And we concluded that upon reasonable suspicion of any person having committed a criminal offense, the police can take action, and whatever action the police takes that curtails the person's right to liberty may be justified under the law. Again, where there's reasonable suspicion that a criminal offense is intended, the law enforcement agencies, particularly the police and other agencies, can act, and whatever action they take might curtail the rights to liberty of a Nigerian, a citizen, and such action will not be questionable, will be justifiable in law. And our discussions were mostly centered around the interrelationship between the police and individual citizens. We must agree that it is only in limited situations that the police come in contact directly with citizens where a crime is committed in the presence of a police officer. In many occasions, what happens is that people bring a report of a commission of a crime to police officers. Now, after the recording and the publishing of the other episode, many questions arose, like what happens to the person that reports somebody to police when the report was made in bad faith, was wrongfully made? And that's what we want to look at in this episode. The law is that where a police officer is instigated by a private citizen to arrest a person, and it is found that the report was made in bad faith, was made mala fide, the law is that the police officer and the person who instigated him, that's the person who procured him, the person who reported the crime to the police, they are all jointly liable to the person who was unlawfully deprived of his liberty. Now, this takes into cognizance the right of every citizen to report crimes to the police. In the Supreme Court case of Faje Mirokun and Commercial Bank of Nigeria, the Supreme Court decided that a citizen has a right to report crimes to the police, but the citizen must make sure that in reporting crimes to the police, it must be made in good faith. It was Agube JSC that gave the leading judgment. He decided that once it is found that the report was made in bad faith, was made mala fide, then both the police officers and the persons who reported will be tied in liability, and they will all be answerable to the person who they hurt, who they curtailed his or her liberty. Now, the courts have evolved many ways of knowing whether a report was made mala fide or in good faith. In many cases, the court have decided that where a person makes double reports, where, for instance, a person after reporting to one division of the police moves ahead to report to another division of the police, the court has held that in such cases, the reporter, the person who instigated the police, will be held liable. Again, where the person took active part in securing the arrest of the person who is reported, where what is done is not just a mere report, where the person didn't just lodge a report and leave the police with the decision of whether to arrest or not, the courts have always held that if the person took any further action to facilitate the arrest of the person whose fundamental right has now been curtailed, the law is that the person who reported will also be held liable. There have been instances where a person reported to the police, and in addition to reporting to the police, the person went ahead to use his own car to go and arrest the person. Those are cases where the courts have held that the person who used his car to help the police to arrest is also liable in infringement of the right to personal liberty. Again, where the report is clearly false, where a false report is made to the police, the courts have also held that the person who made the report and activated the set in motion the power of the police, the executive power of the police in curtailing a person's right to liberty, that person has also been held to be liable for curtailing the right to liberty. So I think the summary of the provision relating to the right to liberty is that once a person's right has been infringed, we discussed last time and the court has held that it doesn't matter how long the person was detained. Once it is found that the person was unlawfully detained, no matter how long, even if it's for 1 hour, that the illegal detention lasted, the person who helped, the person who detained, they are all liable in infringement of the right as protected in Section 35 of the 1999 Constitution. So, and today's episode is just to highlight and to explain that the line of liability doesn't just end with the police officer who arrested. It also extends to people who instigated the police officers in making the arrest. Thank you again for joining in today's episode, and see you next time.